Callie to note roll call. And we will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from October 1st.
Motion to approve. Second.
A motion and a second. Any edits, corrections, or comments? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 5, item for discussion regarding the closure of tax increment district number 3 and affordable housing extension. Alex, it's going to set the stage for our discussion.
Yeah. So we had, just as a side note, we had CDA. These are super hot. We had CDA last week and we had a guy presenting who had to stay right up here and was presentation. So I'll try not to be that guy. Yep.
Well, he was also saying that he is the commentator for some football.
Sun Prairie announcer.
Sun Prairie announcer, yeah. And that's what I was waiting for him to say, touchdown.
Right. I just want to preface the discussion here this evening just by saying, so we had, I sit on the Chamber Board of Directors, and we had our monthly meeting on Monday, and we were talking about things, and I was just sitting there kind of reflecting on just how many new businesses have opened in DeForest and continue to open. I was like, okay, I should probably chart this down. So the Frito-Lay building, I don't know that they have operations fully up and running, but that's a number of jobs. Quick Trip, obviously coming in, Lake City, FedEx was not too long ago. And this is just in my two and a quarter years here. Big Joe Forklifts, Merck, Porter Pipe and Supply. We've had a number of small businesses where there's, I think, roughly 9 more spec industrial buildings. Some of those are the Dickmans putting up. Some of those that are potentially being proposed over there make the Dickman buildings look small. So I think it kind of underscores the need, in my mind, for the discussion that we're having today, particularly as it relates to workforce housing, because we are definitely growing rapidly in a lot of different respects and definitely in employment. So I included a PDF of a PowerPoint presentation in your packets to kind of just give a little bit of an overview of what a 1-year affordable housing extension is. So state statute allows for municipalities to extend the life of a TIF district 1 year past the point when that TID is essentially able to pay off its project costs. And I think, as I mentioned in the last time we talked about the housing strategies report, there was a recommendation that we had in there that talked about this. And I think I mentioned that we would be potentially visiting some of those strategies sooner than later, as we have TID 3, a natural transition into that potentially being able to close in 2025, or to be able to pay off project costs in 2025. So generally speaking, the life of the district can be extended 1 year, with the last year of increment to be used for 75% of that at a minimum has to be used to benefit affordable housing. Again, using the definition that we've kind of talked about over the last couple of months, where housing costs for a specific household can't exceed 30% of the gross monthly income. And that includes utilities. And then statute also allows for 25% of that increment to be used generally to improve housing stock within the community. Certainly that 75% for affordable is a minimum. Communities can certainly use 100% of the increment for that. Funds can also be used across the municipality, so it's not restricted to within the former TID boundaries, and they do not have to be expensed within that year period of the extension. Again, just to kind of reference the housing strategy report that we put together based on the different activities that we had, one of the recommendations in there was to potentially use the statutory 1-year extension. We also did mention TID 3 in there, and made a recommendation to, going forward, evaluate whether or not future districts should potentially be considered for this extension, and taking into account the housing dynamics at any given point in time. And I wanted to just kind of give an example of some different communities that have done this before. This list is obviously not exhaustive, but I thought it actually represented a good variety of the ways that communities have made use of this funding. A couple of them are, I don't want to say boilerplate, but put to use in housing funds. Madison also has one. I didn't put it on this list. Some of them used for planning activities, rehab activities, infrastructure development, I thought was an interesting one. So we'll kind of walk through a couple of these just real quickly. So in Wanakee, they funded the Housing Betterment Fund, and this is a program that their CDA administers. And their goal was that anytime a TIF district is closing, those funds could potentially be used to recapitalize this fund. So it's an ongoing thing, not tied to a particular TIF district. And their goals were to provide direct financial assistance to homeowners, assuming they meet certain income qualifications, to help with home improvement projects. And part of their goals in that program was they recognized that they have obviously a lot of newer housing stock, but also a lot of aging housing stock. And so they wanted to get an influx of capital to improve their aging housing stock, particularly the ones that were inhabited by income qualified individuals. For Sun Prairie, they also did a housing fund. Part of the activities that they used their funds for were to create a satellite tenant resource center. Madison has, I think, the main branch of the Tenant Resource Center. They also created the anti-retaliation program so that to kind of help with landlords retaliating against tenants for advocating for themselves, essentially. And then they also funded a staff position for a housing and equitable development planner. So a couple different ways that they used their housing fund. Some of the ones that I thought were a little bit more creative outside the box thinking. So Fitchburg used their funds to, and this is not a complete picture, some of these communities also used it in other areas as well, but to do planning activities for affordable housing. Monona, again, recognizing that they have a lot of aging housing stock, provided the Renew Monona program to do zero interest loans for upgrades and modernization. La Crosse, I wasn't able to get complete details on this, but they actually funded construction of a couple different energy efficient homes to be sold in lower income neighborhoods. Appleton funded street repairs, infrastructure in a low to moderate income area. And then Oregon used their funds for matching funds to do a redevelopment project, actually, to preserve existing affordable stock and partner with Habitat for Humanity for a development in that community. So where do we sit? TID 3 is projected to be able to pay off its remaining project costs by March of 2025. If we were to consider an affordable housing extension, there's a couple of options. We can do up to a 12-month extension, which I kind of outlined the potential funds that would be available from that. Roughly $600,000 in funding is the final year, full 12 months of increment. You can see the breakdown, the 75-25 split, just to get a sense of what that might look like. Could opt to do an extension basically anywhere up to that full 12 months. So an extension until the end of 2025, you can see some of the dollar amounts associated with something like that. And then any other period extension within that would obviously have corresponding dollar amounts as well. To circle back on some of the activities that we did in the housing focus groups, in the surveys, and in the community workshop, we heard some clear priorities. Specifically, a couple are mentioned here: rental units or starter homes that are affordable to workforce, single family homes affordable to families with children, aging in place retrofits and renovations for our seniors who want us to stay in the homes that they've lived in for a long time, and then a greater housing variety. Those are just a few. Obviously, we went into more depth, but those were the salient ones that I think we picked out of that. The process to extend if we were to look at this to extend TID 3 for the housing extension would be the village board would have to adopt an affordable housing extension resolution after we pay all project costs. And Al and I were kind of going back and forth to try to discern where some of this lands. The statute, I don't think, is particularly clear on some of the details of how and when you do some of these activities. But the resolution itself has to specify the number of months that the extension is going to be taken, and it has to specify how the funds will be used as well. So those things we have to get clear on before adopting that resolution. And it has to state the final year that the tax increment is going to be received. The funds, if we do take that, are set aside into a segregated fund or account. Oh, is it the door? Okay, I couldn't see what the heck was going on back there. I thought somebody's coming in and objecting to everything I was saying. And then finally, we would adopt at close to the end of that extension period, a resolution that would formally end the life of the TIF district. So that's kind of a very high level overview. Before getting into any discussion on this, I just, want to say that I did reach out to the school district, obviously with their referendum and some of what they have going on, to kind of get their perspective on it. Kathy Davis is their business development person, I think, over there. And she indicated that the value that would come back onto the rolls would potentially reduce the school levy by 6 cents per $1,000. And then she also said some of their concerns, which I think applies to housing in general, is that potentially how and where that housing occurs could impact their enrollment. So wanted to just kind of get their input into this as well. Obviously, the second concern is a concern with housing in general. Anywhere, I think if we were to look at some kind of a program, we would obviously keep them in mind in that and structure it in a way that we're communicating with them and making sure we're not causing adverse burden. So that's kind of the general lay of the land. I guess I'd be happy to take some questions or thoughts or
Just
see where we all sit.
before we get started too far, can you go back to how the money would come from the TID, and you're looking at about 600 grand? Is that accurate?
It's a rough projection. So that would be, so let's say we adopted an extending resolution next spring for a full 12 months. The increment generated over that 12-month period would go into that segregated fund for housing. And that is approximately $600,000, what we project.
Right. All right, I'm going to open it up for discussion. Rebecca?
Sorry. So if we were to adopt an extension, it's really loud.
I know they are loud today.
And you said you had to specify how it was going to be expended, which makes sense. What if we ended up not doing anything with it? Is it just peter out, or or are you then required? In other words, I think you know what I mean by that.
So if we specified a program with certain goals or whatever, and we just never
implement it.
My guess is, and I could defer to Al on this, my guess is it would sit in that fund interminably. But I'm not going to let that happen.
Yeah, it becomes kind of a use it or lose it thing, but there's no provision to lose it. The money comes to the village. It can only be used for that purpose. So you either use it for that purpose or you hang on to it. There's no, Department of Revenue doesn't have any enforcement authority. Nobody else has enforcement authority. So unless somebody were to sue the village saying, you collected this money for affordable housing and didn't use it, there's really no remedy in the statute for that eventuality.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll keep going with other questions, but the other thing that I think is interesting is, while the school maybe gave us that comment regarding wouldn't it be nice to have 6 cents per thousand right now, the extended TID could grow more funds, and they are looking for housing for teachers. And so it's sort of both sides of the coin for them, because this could in fact end up being a program that was very helpful to getting housing for a teacher. Something's going on. I don't know what it is, but so I keep that in mind. And I think I made the comment to you before that I don't think we should be penny wise and pound foolish by saying, well, 6 cents now. But in the future, we could accomplish a lot, produce more taxes with more housing, have affordable housing perhaps for those very teachers they're concerned about. So, I'm very supportive of doing something that would stimulate affordable housing that is workforce-based.
And just to be clear too, so the district will get funds back from the eventual closure of
Right.
this, or excuse me, the school district will get funds back from the eventual closure of TID 3. So that will happen. It's just the timing of it. And then there are also provisions in there where after the extension is taken, excess funds of project costs also get dispersed. So there will be some funds coming back prior to the end
Okay, we have Bill and then Jan and then Rebecca.
So as you discuss this and consider programs and affordable housing, different levels of affordable housing, this is quite unique, a quite unique opportunity in that it's funding that you as a board can allocate and set the parameters on. So that's in comparison to the other types of funding that's available for affordable housing, which comes with federal attachments, state attachments, and requirements that if a developer per se takes on, or we take on as a match, are limitations outside of our control. So keep that in mind, in that this program being provided by the state, an opportunity for you to set directives.
Thank you. Jan?
So going back to what Jane was speaking of, we need the housing for workforce, such as our teachers, our fire department staff, those types of people. But I can't imagine that we can set parameters that are going to say that, well, you're going to be in this type of career or job to have this housing. Because I would think that there would be some fair housing issues or be discriminatory or something along that lines. Can you expand on that?
Well, so from a statutory perspective, the main requirements are that affordability piece, right? So that 30% to hit the affordable bucket, right? The extra 25%, it's a little bit more leeway to do what you will. In terms of, yes, we can't put any restrictions that would violate fair housing law. Outside of that, I think there is an opportunity to put certain parameters on it. Now, could you require somebody to be employed at a certain, that gets a little bit messy. And I think that gets a little bit messy for a number of reasons. I'm not sure that the greatest of those are legal, but also just in talking through like a business sponsored model with developers that I've had conversations with, the struggle becomes then, well, what happens when, so like, for example, let's say a rental that says, okay, you can be here if you're employed by such and such company. What happens if your employment terminates? Are we then going to evict you? So that stuff, I think, is hard to navigate. Does that kind of get to what you're speaking about?
Yes. It sounds a little gray. I don't know. Al, do you have anything more?
I'm not an expert on the Federal Fair Housing Act, but it generally prohibits discrimination based on prohibited classes. It's not, you can generally discriminate on the basis of employment, income, things like that. The question, I mean, there are a lot of questions that come up like, does somebody get evicted because they lose their job? But I think you probably could do something along the lines of, providing a grant to affordable housing developer, and one of the conditions being that at least 5 of the units be given priority for, say, teachers. The real question, I think, is going to come down to, is there a public purpose for that restriction? And, I think you could justify the need to have firefighters and teachers be able to live locally. And, if you've got a shortage of housing stock that they can afford, you probably could do something like that. I'd want to look at it in more detail before you actually did it, but I wouldn't rule it out as a possibility.
Okay, well, I think that's good information and it's a nice place to start looking into. Thanks.
All right, we're going to have Rebecca, then Jim, and then Tashidra.
My question goes back to the schools. One of the things that you mentioned related to the funding aspect was also related to, it could impact the enrollments. And in your discussions with them, could you expand on that to help us better understand the negative impact versus the positive impact? And in terms of, right now they're looking at a referendum. They still have some room, but they don't have an exorbitant amount of room for extra kiddos. And the more kids they stuff in there means the higher ratio of, student to teacher, which affects education outcomes. I'm concerned. I want to make sure that we're really keeping that in mind as we're growing, that we're not growing faster than what we can actually keep up with. So could you expand on that?
Yeah, I think the long and short of it is that concern applies to the housing growth in general, not necessarily an extension in this regard. Right? So it'd be the ultimate end use of these funds. So if ultimately $600,000 ends up bringing, it won't, like 200, new apartments or whatever, or single family homes, and it's in an area that the district is already struggling with from a capacity standpoint, and there's 100 kids that come in there, then we start to have issues. But if the program is geared more towards either locations or uses that don't have that kind of an impact on the school district, then obviously that's less of a concern. For example, I think like the aging in place renovations, that obviously would not necessarily impact the school district much. So I think it's less about this extension in particular and more about housing growth and particularly families and how that impacts them.
We're going to move to Jim.
Okay, thank you. I got a couple ideas and I just want to run them past you. First off, I personally feel that this is a real good idea. And I go back to, actually, I guess Brian Taylor is where I maybe first heard it, is like, one of the comments he talked about is like, how does the TIFs really help our individuals? And he brought it up in light as taxes, as far as like trying to lower our taxes and being able to point to the TIFs as doing that. But I personally get excited hearing about this because this affordable housing is a way we can directly impact maybe somebody's home improvement project. And we can point to this as a way that the TIFs are helping the individuals. And I see you nodding, so I think you're already answering my question, is that's something we can do, is maybe have, maybe in my head, it'd be like a percentage of maybe say 25% of a home improvement up to $20,000 or something like that we can give to somebody based on maybe age or income and things like that. Is that something we can discuss in the future? Is that within the realm of the programs you're thinking?
Yeah, I think it absolutely would. Those are the types of things that we would have to get a little bit more detail on in terms of developing the program and specifying the use for it. But I mean, I think we see examples of that in some of these programs themselves in terms of home repair and things like that. Yeah, that's
I
definitely.
would say with my background in zoning, that's some of the things that we hear is that people aren't keeping up their houses. So if we can have a program similar to that, that helps lift up neighborhoods that are getting depressed, that's good for the village overall. And I personally like that again, because it helps promote ownership, and maybe the teachers or the firemen or really anybody that's looking to buy a house, maybe that house needs a new roof. And if they know that's programs out there that can help them get into that home ownership that way. So I get personally excited about that idea. And it seems like you said, it fits into what others are doing. Two other ideas I'd like to run past you is, I just know the walkability of a community is very important for low income, or whatever you want to say, affordable people needing affordable homes. So I'd be curious if, say, sidewalk connections and trail connections could be a portion of this funding. And then the other idea I have is a greater concern of mine is that we're sort of, DeForest is pretty well surrounded on 2 or 3 sides by Windsor. And then we have, say, potential growth towards Vienna, but I think that growth is limited by topography in my view. And I think that could be a good planning effort to look at that, know the, say, 100-year boundary of the forest, to try to start picking out locations of residents, namely the affordable housing aspects. Thank you.
All right. Then we'll go on to Tashidra.
Yeah, I like this concept, Alex. So thank you for bringing it forward. I think, the housing issue that we see, not just in DeForest, but across Dane County and just across the nation is real. And it's only going to continue to grow. I just think as we decide and as we're starting to discuss things, I think we need to pay particular attention to the terms that we use and how we choose to define those. When we use terms like affordable housing and low income, those sometimes are used interchangeably, but they're not the same thing. And I don't want us to have another issue where we think we're doing one thing and then it ends up being another thing, where we think we're creating affordable apartments and then we realize that those apartments really aren't affordable to the individuals that are seeking to get them. So I hope that as we look at this and we start to consider it, that we look at our terms and we define them, because once we put the pen to paper and we solidify it, we're locked into that. And I also like the idea of thinking about who we're putting this forth, and we talk about teachers and firefighters, but also law enforcement, but then also people who work at our local businesses as well. And making sure that we're taking all individuals in consideration. So like I said, we identified that this is an issue that we as a village, we want to tackle. We put together the work groups and brought people together and identified the target issues that we wanted to address. And so, Alex, I really appreciate you putting this PowerPoint together and, giving us ideas of what other municipalities and whether other areas are doing. And so I think this is a great starting point. And a great place for us to start and consider. So I really do support this. I just want us to really think about how we specify our terms and how we put together our documents so that we really put forth something that captures what we really want going forward.
Thank you, Tashidra. Okay. Rebecca?
I would just like to ditto what she just said, because I think that's really important that we really make it very clear what we're actually wanting to accomplish and then stick to that, because hasn't always been the case.
So one of my questions has to do with administering a program like this. You know, I go back to the home program that we had that sat there, and then that was Michelle time, not your time. But we did nothing with it because we didn't have anybody to administer it within the village. And so we'd have to think about that if we put something like this together and make sure that either it fit within the parameters of the departments and they would take on a role within the program, or we actually had someone that could administer it. We'd have to think about that. So it was the right way to make sure things happened.
Sure. I will say that one of the other recommendations in the report we put together was the creation of a housing task force. That could be a certainly good way to go about implementing this, potentially. Obviously, there still need to be staff, right, to administer. That's a given. But that could be a nice component of it.
Often a task force, a commission, or a committee simply creates more work.
It's true too.
Staff. And so it would be hard for me to imagine them really carrying out a program. But I think they're still necessary for perspective and recommendations. So, okay, other comments, questions, suggestions? Jim?
Just to play off the idea of a task force is that we have some multiple committees already formed, that maybe one of those becomes a role of one of the committees that are already meeting monthly or whatever.
And it may be something the CDA could help with too.
Yep.
Good, good.
So I'm hearing general positivity and some really good ideas. I think the next step would be to really, it seems like, well, next year we have to do this, but there's not that much time. So I will probably bring a couple more options back in terms of what a potential program and some ideas might look like. And we can just kind of keep the ball rolling until we solidify on something and go from there.
Randy, someone just came in and put something on the desk. One more? All right.
Just one more thing, kind of adding on to what Jim was talking about earlier. I just saw the Habitat for Humanity, and I know that we've talked a lot about that in the past, and I don't want to leave that option off the table. I want that one to at least be considered as part of this.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I actually made a note to talk about that today, but I did not. So thank you for bringing that up. I have had very, very recent conversations as recently as last week with the COO for Dane County Habitat, and they are very interested in coming out here and doing a development here. So that's definitely on the table as well.
Okay. Thank you, Alex. And I do think you had encouragement to go forward and research and develop more. Is that what I'm hearing from folks? Okay. All right, we will continue then. Bill, administrative update.
I don't have anything beyond what's on the agenda tonight.
Thank you. Finance update. All right, you got things on the agenda tonight too. Good. Police department update. Jim?
Yep, sorry, good evening. I don't have anything on the agenda, so I just got one quick thing. Officer Ryan Madden has chose to leave the department, so his last day is Thursday night. He's going to another agency in the county he lives in, so it's kind of a no-brainer for him and his family, but he's done good work for us for 5 years, appreciate his service, and he'll be moving on effective Thursday night. So that's the only update for me.
All right, well, that's too bad. Public service update, Mr. Blau.
Yep, Highway I and V will have some closures starting the 23rd. That's where we're finishing the sanitary sewer across. We had to go further on Highway V. Had some negotiations to get the detour to follow on the county roads. So, but they agreed to that. So that's starting on the 23rd. So that should be wrapped up that week or the following week after. Lead and copper, we had to have a filing in with the DNR by the 16th. We had that in last week to them. We got confirmation that they received it, and if they have questions, they'll follow up. But we have noted all the houses we could so far. There's some that we still don't have answers on, and that's fine. We just needed to note that we're still working on those. So it's an ongoing effort. We'll do that. The leaf vac is out. Maybe you've seen it running around, which is good. It started to collect leaves as they are falling fast and furious. And then just personally, I want to thank you for allowing us the opportunity for learning and growth. I had the opportunity to go to the National Recreation and Parks Association Conference last week in Atlanta, Georgia with Reese and Sam. We had a lot of good learning opportunities and a lot of good experiences to see. So it's always nice that the board supports us in those endeavors because I think it's important for us to know what's out there and what we can bring back. So
Great,
thanks.
thank you. All right, community development app. Yeah,
Can I just ask about the lead? Do you know how many services we have out there? Or are we pretty clean?
I don't remember off the top. We're 85, 95% clean, right? It's really this downtown area that we've got some areas. We know, I can say there's 3 houses I think that I'm aware of that have services to them. Our stuff is really clean. I don't think there's too much. And if there's anything, we'll probably be getting it taken care of in the next couple of years with Holem. But most of our stuff has been upgraded or changed out away from lead.
Yeah, and I guess I use the term clean. We probably shouldn't use that term, but I mean, it's clean, but I think I remember from past conversations, we don't have any lead mains ourselves. It's only the laterals we're talking about.
There can be connections that contained lead as well back in the day, right? But those, we shouldn't have any joints like that either, I don't think so.
Okay, great. We're way above or way ahead of a lot of communities. So.
Sure. A lot of older community. I mean, we're an older community, right? We started in 1865, I think it is, 1863, whatever we started as a community. But the bulk of our community has really grown since the lead ban went into effect in the 1970s or whatever. So. Hey. Oh, I thought you were, didn't you sign? Aren't you John Hancock? All right, thanks.
all right. We will continue then with Alex and CDA, Community Development Update.
So I just have a couple updates from the CDA. That's a good segue. That I think the board should probably have some level of awareness on. The first of which is we are getting ready to, the CDA is getting ready to submit a grant application to WEDC for their Small Business Development Grant Program. The awards are up to, they're from $50,000 to $250,000 per applicant. And funds have to be 100% passed through to small businesses in the community. So it's a cool program. One of the really innovative things that we're trying to do with this is actually partner with Windsor's CDA to co-administer the program so that we could essentially serve small businesses in both communities. So it's kind of a nice little partnership. The application deadline's Friday, so we're going to be submitting that, and I will let you know how it goes. But hopefully we can get some real dollars into the small businesses in the community. I think there's a question, and then I'll move on to the other two.
Deshidra?
So I really do like the WEDC. They're a great group to work with. And if you get the funds, they are really great to work with. And they do work with who they administer the funds to get the money to the small businesses that you work with. So if you do apply and get the funds, what are going to be the requirements and how are the businesses going to be able to apply for those funds and utilize those funds?
Yeah, so I think what I should probably do is send you all a draft of the program outline that we've got put together, and that spells out some of that. But broadly speaking, the requirements are the way that we're crafting this program. There's certain geographical requirements, primarily DeForest's downtown and redevelopment areas, Windsor's downtown and redevelopment areas, and then Windsor's enterprise agriculture area. So those are sort of the 3 geographical locations. Any business that has 25 or fewer FTEs, full-time employees, can apply for the grant, and eligible costs are basically a whole slew of different kinds of capital improvements. We are allowing mechanical upgrades as well. Anything that's considered a permanent fixture or a permanent structure some site work, as long as there's a larger project involved as well. So I'll send you all the draft outline and you can take a peek at it. Hopefully that will answer a lot of questions, but that's how we have it drafted up currently.
Thank
And the
you.
25 FTE, that's a WEDC requirement, so they won't let us facilitate anything above that.
Okay.
The other two updates, both from CDA, as you're all reasonably aware, it's been an ongoing process to do our Section 18 disposition, which essentially removes the CDA from the traditional public housing program, and our residents at those facilities will receive Section 8 vouchers. That whole ball of wax is slated to finish up on October 24th. When we'll actually have the closing date for that. So that's kind of a milestone for the CDA. If you have any questions or if people ask you about it at our facilities or anywhere in the community, I'd be happy to kind of share whatever information you need to know about that. And then lastly, at our CDA meeting, we did pass a resolution of necessity for condemnation, starting that procedure for the property at 420 North Main Street, which is the vacant car wash there. So a few different items coming out of CDA land.
Thank you. Comments or questions? If not, we will move on to Callie. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm just curious about the condemnation. Is that out of necessity or a lack of conversation?
So that's out of necessity. Yep.
Thank you.
And lack of response. So, all right, Callie.
We've been a little busy with this upcoming election. I just wanted to provide you with some numbers of where we stand on absentee ballots so far. As of this afternoon, we have issued 1,668 ballots. We've had 818 returned. And the registered voter number in the village is 7,591. That was also as of about 2 o'clock today. It's very possible those numbers have gone up, because we are sending out a lot, so. And then Tuesday, the 22nd, we begin in-person absentee voting. We'll be here at Village Hall. It will be during business hours. Wednesday, the 23rd and Wednesday, the 30th, we are extending our hours to 6:30 PM to allow people that are working the opportunity to come in and vote. It's something we've frequently heard from residents, that our business hours are also equivalent to their work hours. So we're hoping to allow people an opportunity to come in and do that.
Okay, great. Yes.
Yeah, Callie, looking at a past video of meetings, and I get a sorry you don't have access. You know what, the Zoom meetings? Oh, okay. This is on my home computer and also this one's, because
It was brought to my attention last week. I've not had a chance to get to it, but it's something to do with our migration to DeForestWI.gov. And I think how those were linked on our service to get out. So I just got to reach out to our IT company and they can fix those links and correct that. So.
Oh, okay. Finding some 404 not there when you click on some of the things in the website, so.
Yep, that's Windex use 404. I'm just kidding. Yeah, we'll work on that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Reese isn't here, but Judd, is there anything for recreation and community? Okay. All right, so we don't have a closed session tonight. So for the committee of the whole, unless there's something else that we need to take up, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
A motion, do we have a second? And we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned at 5:45. We will reconvene at at 6 PM for the regular village board meeting. Thank you. On October 15th, I would ask Callie to note roll call. And I would ask Rebecca to lead us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Announcements. The village board will convene into closed session pursuant to section 19.851E of the Wisconsin statutes for purposes of deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. So negotiating a development agreement with TDC DeForest the Fourth LLC, and section 19.851G of the Wisconsin statutes for purposes of conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which he or she is likely to become involved. Building code and site plan violations at Churchill condos tonight. All right, we will move to item 5, the consent agenda. And I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we'll move to item 6, public appearances. Tonight we have a public hearing regarding the Village of DeForest Comprehensive Plan Future Land Use Map Amendment. This was properly noticed, and we will hold the hearing on the proposed amendment at this time. It is 6:03, and I'd like to open the public hearing. Does anybody want to say anything from the staff? Mark. Hi, Mark.
Good evening. I'll just introduce
And
this.
there you are. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I'll just quickly introduce this and allow anyone else to speak. This is a proposed amendment to 2 maps within the comprehensive plan, the future land use map and the Northern Interstate Corridor Plan map. The purpose of the amendment would be to change a portion of a development site known as Rivers Bend at the present time on Long River Road from the low density village residential future land use category to the medium density future land use category. And as you'll probably hear, the proposal that is behind this request would essentially balance the density recommendations of those 2 categories across the 50-acre site that includes the 20 acres that would be amended with this comprehensive plan change. I think with that, I'll close my introductory comments and be happy to address further questions when we get to the discussion item later on. Thank you.
Alex?
I was just gonna add, I think we were planning to have a brief presentation at this part of the agenda from the prospective developer, unless you'd rather have that at a later item.
I'm open to it now if they would like to do that.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to present. My name is Paul Schmitter, Director of Development with Fiduciary Real Estate, 789 North Water Street, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The proposal before you is very similar to the one that you saw back in March. So since March, we saw you on the 19th. We went to the Planning and Zoning Commission for a concept review. We had our neighborhood meeting on the 11th of June. And in the meantime, we looked at a couple things internally, market study and some other items that kind of brought us back down to the 24th at Planning and Zoning, where this proposal was passed unanimously. Which one? I tried it. Oh, there it goes. So with me tonight is Sam Elliott to my left. We've got both our architect and civil engineer in case there's any questions. The site I think you're all familiar with. We're just south of the cemetery, east side of I-94 and River Road. Almost 50 acres. So the conceptual site plan, again, I'm not doing that. We didn't change anything on the overall unit count, 298 residences, a very low density of 6.04. I think that's what Planner Offers was referencing when we kind of average over the site. We're barely over the low density mark of 6 units per acre. And 63% of the green space remains on the site. 42 residential buildings, all of them are condo style apartment residences. None of them are over 2 stories, all have attached garages. None of them are what we call corridor buildings. We've also managed to retain a 3-acre public park. And our control point for the development is really our clubhouse. It's out on River Road. It contains a fitness center, swimming pool, dog run. But I think more importantly, contains our property management staff, leasing professionals, and the actual property manager. The road extensions are consistent with the village long range plans, and we've got a rather large buffer zone from River Road to the majority of the buildings. There's a site plan referencing what I just talked about. On the far west, we've got a rather large green space area that helps us meet the sound ordinance. Again, the clubhouse over on the right-hand side of the drawing by River, immediately adjacent River Road. And again, we tried to locate the majority of the buildings in the center of the site to provide a nice buffer on both sides. We are planning on phasing this project. We've got 206 units proposed for what you see there on phase 1, leaving 92 units on the phase 2 part of it. And this would be the clubhouse. This is very similar to both a project in Madison called the 85 and one that's currently being constructed in Verona called the Apex. Very nice for our residences to use. It's got a community space, kitchen, workout room, and the pool. And we're very proud of how we put a lot of money into the clubhouses. These things are anywhere between $1.5 million and $2 million, just the clubhouse. The last slide here before questions is artist rendering, architect's rendering of what these might look like. We're anxious to get into the next phase of the project, which would be the FDP, and we'll really define more the colors and things and all the engineering, things like that. So with that, I'd be happy to address any questions.
Let me just suggest, and I'm looking at Al over the screen here. Q&A probably goes with the present or with the item on the agenda later on rather than during the public hearing. So we'll hold you to come back for questions after the hearing.
Absolutely.
So thank you. All right. With that, we will ask Bernie it's just a handwriting issue, but I think it's Zalzler. Please correct me.
Yes, Gonzalez.
Okay. If you give your name and your address, make sure your microphone is on. It is. As long as it's green, you're good.
All right, sounds good. Thank you very much for having me. Just real quickly, my name is Bernie Gonzalez. I live at 817 Sunnybrook Drive, which is the corner of our backyard abuts River Road and right across the street from Norway Grove Lutheran Church. I just wanted to show up today and just register my concern about any provision that would allow something from low density to go to medium density. I'm not a fan of the word density. Some people actually like high density. They believe that's the definition of Shangri-La in society. With 33 years in law enforcement, I've come to the opinion that higher density means strain on lots of different areas of city and village government services. More people using, not necessarily contributing, whether it's traffic, whether it's calls for service, that type of thing. Also, I just want to just encourage people not to, we don't have to look any further than the city of Madison to see examples of ways of taking perfectly good cornfields and making something that had good intentions and it turned out not to. So I'd be in favor of whatever density it's at, keeping it there. That's all. Any questions for me?
No, but
Nope.
thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right. I don't have any other appearance slips. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak at the hearing? If not, I will close the hearing at 6:12 p.m. And I thank people for participation. We pass this over to Callie. All right, we will move on then. And we have presentations from the Office of Congressman Mark Pocan. Is it Morgan? Sally? Sally, okay.
Close enough. Hi, all. All right, just get my notes out. Okay, thanks so much for having me. I won't take up too much of your time tonight, but I did want to stop by and put a face to a name. For those of you who don't know me or haven't met me before, my name is Morgan Solly, and I'm a field representative with Congressman Mark Pocan. My main purpose for attending tonight is to talk a bit about what our office can provide for you all and your constituents. The first service that our office provides is constituent services, which is where our casework team serves as a liaison between a constituent and a federal agency. We cover all federal agency casework areas at our Madison office, but a few examples of topics we might be able to assist with would be passports, issues with the IRS, Veterans Affairs, the Small Business Administration, or the Department of Agriculture. Another service that our office can offer are letters of support from Mark. If there is an organization or government that is applying for a federal grant, oftentimes Mark can send along a letter of support to accompany that application. Our office also has the ability to provide research for grant opportunities for constituents. Right now, I'm only able to submit a grant research request on behalf of a potential applicant, whether that be a city or village government or a nonprofit. So if there is a constituent who is seeking federal grant opportunities, but don't really know what's available for them in the project that they have, please feel free to connect them directly with me, as I currently do all of the grant services for our office right now. I also run along some business cards so that you have my contact, whether it be for that reason or for any reason that you may need to get in contact with me, or office. One of the main reasons that I wanted to come was just to be here and make sure you all know how to contact me and you have a direct line to our office. Finally, myself and the rest of our team are in frequent contact with our legislative staff and the congressman to ensure any community needs are communicated directly to Mark and relevant policy staff. So we're always happy to collect opinions or pass along local concerns that are tied to federal policy. But yeah, that's all I have. I'm happy to take any questions, but I'll also pass out my cards so that you know how to contact me. And if you have a question you want to talk about later, feel free to just email me or give our office a call.
And where are you located?
We are located in Madison on 10 East Doty, right across the street from the Capitol.
Great, thank you. All right, questions? I think we've all used constituent services at some point or another, and we're glad to have a face and someone we can reach out to. So if you want to give your cards to Brandy, we'll make sure everyone gets them.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, item 8.1, discussion regarding proposed 2025 budget for. Just 1 minute.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to question that we have people in the audience. I didn't know how long this couple items are gonna take. Or I guess one item.
I don't know how long it'll take. It could be a lengthier one. Are you asking to out of order and take 10.1?
That's what I was gonna suggest. If this item 8 is gonna take some time, I think it'd be nice for the people that are waiting.
I would second it if you move.
I would so move that we do 10.1 and 10.2 out of order.
Okay, I'm okay with that. We have a second by Rebecca. Is everyone okay with that? If so, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We will take them out of order and take 10.1. Thank you, Jim.
Yep, sorry, Carol.
All right, well, with that, we will move you out of that chair because we're going to move. We love you, however. All right, item 10.1, ordinance 2024-023, an ordinance to amend the future land use map and conceptual development plan dash northern interstate corridor in the Village of DeForest comprehensive plan affecting lands west of River Road and north of Daly Road. All right, we have Mark and I'm sure Alex and probably a little bit of Bill Chang on this. So we will also take questions for our gentleman who made a presentation during the public hearing. So with that, I will ask Mark if he wants to start by saying anything.
Thank you. I'll add one thing, and that is within the ordinance resolution, or within the ordinance clause, there's a now therefore provision that I think is noteworthy. And that's number 1. So this comprehensive plan amendment, as I mentioned earlier, is geared to the proposal that you heard the fiduciary team present. So the comprehensive plan amendment allowing for the density increase in part of this area would be tied to the development plan that fiduciary is offering. And if that development plan were not to proceed, the comprehensive plan amendment would not take effect. So I think that's important to keep in mind, is that it's sort of a what you see is what you get. The medium density residential category or moderate density residential category allows densities between 6 and 12 units per acre, generically speaking. But in this case, it would only allow fiduciary's development plan, which, as was presented earlier, as a whole, only goes up above 6 units per acre by 0.4. So the comprehensive plan amendment is a very conservative approach that I have recommended. In another place in time, this might have been argued as consistent with the comprehensive plan, generally speaking. But in this case, we thought it was important to bring it forward, but only with this limitation you see here in number 1. And again, I'm happy to answer more questions on this comp plan amendment, or as we get into item 10.2, the detailed plans that fiduciary has offered.
All right. Thank you, Mark. The one comment you might make is we've heard before people being concerned about use of the word density. The use of that word has to do with defining things for a comprehensive plan. And I don't know that it's a word we've developed, but probably comes with the development of the plan. Can you address that at all?
Well, density could be very many things. In DeForest's extraterritorial jurisdiction, it means that you can only develop one home for every 35 acres you own. So it's a fairly generic term that defines how many units you can put on a particular piece of land. And then only when you attach qualifiers to it does it mean more or fewer units. In this case, the village has 3 urban-ish categories. Low density, which is predominantly single family. And clearly this proposal is not a single family development. And within the village's comprehensive plan, that covers a density range of 0 to 6 units per acre. What does that mean practically speaking? It means lots as small as what you might find in a Chapel Green development and larger lots. We then have a moderate density village residential category within the comprehensive plan. That happens to be the area that's in the darker brown on the map. So part of the site is already designated that way. That's advised for development in a density range of between 6 and 12 units per acre. And that's not unlike what you're seeing with the fiduciary proposal. A fair number of duplexes, townhouses, condominiums like you see in Conservancy Place near Windsor Road, and that kind of density range. And then the village has a higher density residential category. That's not what we're talking about in this area at all. That is 12 to 24 units per acre. And that's where you see the apartment buildings that have developed in parts of Conservancy Place and along 51 and in other parts of the village. We have seen development proposals in this area that have suggested higher density development, apartment development. That's not what this is and not what's being requested at this time. So that's maybe a long answer to what density means in the context of the village and its comprehensive plan.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. All right, let us continue forward then. And I would ask if others want to address anything. Otherwise, I'll open it up for discussion and questions. I can't hear a word you're saying.
I don't have any additional comments.
Okay, thank you. I'm old. I'm sorry. All right. Yes, Jim?
I got 2 questions, and the first one I believe will be easy to answer. I just don't know if I am directing it at Mark or the applicants. I see that you're doing 2 phases. Is your proposal going to be 2 different FDPs, or is you gonna come in as 1 FDP? I don't know. Again, if the applicant makes that decision or if that's something in our ordinance. Do you know what I'm asking?
And I'll express my preference. The preference is that it be 1 final development plan that just so happens to be developed in 2 phases, which is not uncommon. And I think my impression is that they will be ready with the final engineering and architectural plans for the whole 50 acres at once. And then also that my impression is that they will be eager, once they're ready to move beyond phase 1, to go to phase 2 without having to come back to wait for another P&Z meeting, for instance. But I don't mean to be a soothsayer of the folks at fiduciary might have a different opinion. And the ordinance does allow for either approach.
And just to remind people, this item is to make a decision on the map and the amendment, not on the project at large, correct?
Yes.
No. Any further comments or questions?
I got my second question that sort of ties it into the map, if
Sure.
I could. Because there was some discussion about the crossing of, I say I-39, 9094. And I'm curious that it seems like that hasn't really been concluded if we're still proposing that. And that's why I was curious, I'll say, is if we're going to be doing 2 phases of an FDP. So I think if that crossing is something that we want, we might want to plan, say, Street A a little bit better, how it would go past Street C.
So that was a consideration in a discussion that we've had with fiduciary. If you can see right between the 2 southerly blue buildings there, we left enough room for a right of way to get through there in the future. Previous iteration of this site plan did have that southerly building pulled north more. And so that access, that crossing is represented in the village's official plan or official map. And it's being considered.
And I can add that this plan allows a second alternative as well. And that is a crossing that would extend Daly Road directly across the south property line. So 2 options remain open for potential future implementation should the village and ultimately WISDOT think that they're appropriate.
Okay. Yep.
Yes, Rebecca.
I would like to hear, and I think Chief Olson is still on here, the concerns that he, and if I don't know, the fire chief is on there, or is he?
No.
Okay. Because I know that we had concerns about that even the last time we talked about this. And I'm still seeing that as a concern. And I need clarification about this.
What is your concern?
The concerns that have been expressed by the chief. He says that the chief has also expressed some concern over future police services demands associated with the quantity of housing on the site. And basically the same thing with the fire also. But I mean, we've got issues with our funding for the fire right now. And this is going to add, it sounds like it's going to be adding some added stress to them as well as potentially added stress to the police department. I'd like clarification about this from them before I'm willing to go forward with this.
So I spoke with Chief Lefebvre this morning. We shared emails on the fire department and EMS concern. And that's primarily in regards to access and being able to move the ladder truck throughout that development. And as you will see, as you can see in there, there is a proposed plan that allows the access necessary for the fire apparatuses.
Okay, that answers that question, but there's also the question of what Chief Olson had expressed also.
Yeah, and I'll let Chief Olson next.
Yep. Excuse me. When I first looked at it, our concern is basically what's the draw going to be in our future service. That's a bit of density in a confined area. I've had some concerns over access off of Only River Road. We saw, and they did have a secondary ingress egress to the site. but again, both of them are on River Road, and that gets to be a challenge when that's the only way in, only way out. I believe in talking with Mark, I'm trying to refresh my memory here a little bit, looking at the thing. So thanks for putting it up. But they did make some change to the inner roads that would allow for easier access throughout the site. But again, large amount of what looks to be multifamily in a pretty condensed area. What's our service demand going to be, and what's the future going to be, as long as there's good property management generally on site, or quality of tenant, trying to think of the right way to say it, tenant screening before we put people in units that can make it an enjoyable living experience for everybody that's there.
So then, related to that, as far as the fire and PD goes, there's going to be increased costs associated with them, potentially looking at more personnel. And we're already having issues with funding. So I'm concerned. I'm concerned. I mean, because we kind of got blindsided a little bit. So
I don't see any more cost related to the fire department. I think their issue was being able to turn their truck around, and there were a number of neighborhoods in this town they're concerned about that. They have to be able to get in.
I understand that, but you're going to have approximately 300 units. There's going to be calls. That's going to increase some of the services. And you can't say there's not going to be, because there will be. So it will increase services for the both PD and the fire and EMS. Now, how much, I don't know. We don't know that. And that is a concern. And we've got some funding issues right now that we need to try and balance all of this. And this is a concern that's been presented to me from folks in the community. I've been looking at it. I've talked with you earlier today about this. So I'm concerned about this, and I'm not sure I'm seeing a solution.
I can address. Oh.
Please.
Yeah, so this is you know, not only an issue on this development, but it's an issue community-wide. As we try to balance how we budget versus how we grow, and then we balance residential growth with industrial and commercial growth, as the tax revenues from each of those developments supplement each other. So, you know, with any development that's gonna bring in 300 units, you know, you multiply that by 2.5, you know, for occupants, you're increasing population by about 600. So yeah, that's going to be a draw on the village's resources and services. With that being said, we also have areas within the village that's been platted. You know, we can bring up Heritage Gardens. And at that time, should have been considered the services for that subdivision also. That hasn't matured as quickly as we had initially thought it would. And so so when you compare apples, try to compare apples to apples to see, you know, what the draw on services is, it's hard to do. And we do have budgeted in next year's budget to take a look at a study to try to get a handle on some of that, right? In a growing community, you're always going to have a continuation in demand for services, whether it's police, fire, EMS, parks and services, et cetera. And really, I believe that's how then the village continues to budget through finances to keep up with that. You've heard me say time and time over again, the village over the last couple of years has consistently grown at about 4.5% to 5% over the last year. our budgets have grown year to year, approximately 2.5 to 3% each year, at least in the time that I've been here. And so we've tried to keep up with the growth, and I think we've been doing a good job in keeping the levels of service adequate and exceeding some expectations in areas. And so as we move forward, and whether it's this development or others that have been proposed, whether it's high density, low density, or medium density, that's the balancing act. That's the challenge that we have to here. And the strategy, the financial strategy that we've deployed is to try to shave off those highs and low points so that the growth in the budget and the expenditure keeps up with the growth in population. Now, vice versa, if the growth in population, the growth in the community starts to decrease, we'd have to take a look at decreasing budget expenditures. But that's not a situation that we'd want to be in. So again, it's hard to answer the question directly because I don't know what, a police call to a residential home costs at this point. And it's not a one-to-one comparison. A police call, say, to the south side of DeForest may cost more than a call to this location, depending on, what type of service is rendered once that service gets there, right? And you got different levels, different amounts of time expended there, different, levels of investigation that has to go into a single case. And so as a village and as a community, we really need to consider all those factors and then balance the costs of services accordingly. It's a long-winded explanation, sorry.
Thank you. Jim?
Thank you for taking that, Bill, because I was gonna makes my answer a little bit shorter too, because where I go back is maybe 15 or 20 years. And I remember at that time, and I'm sort of looking at Judd maybe to help me out, but there was a lot of large subdivisions that were coming online. We had all the Conservancy Place, Hawthorne Points, River Turns was going. We had Elaine Erickson's or Heritage Garden. We have Campbell's Hill, that was Win Acres, Conservancy Place. So we did a lot of conversations about the service levels, and we implemented some impact fees, and I think maybe some of them got removed because you have to figure out like what is supposed to be done by taxes versus impact fees. But I think this conversation to me about service levels is not a new conversation. To me, it's been something that's been there for 15, 20 years. It's something that we got to take into account. We looked at it a lot, like I said, back then when all these subdivisions were coming online, and it's good to hear that we're looking at it again in the upcoming year. So I'm thinking that's real positive. And the other thing that I wanted to mention too, I know was mentioned of a concern of the PD, and I'm assuming the fire too, is that it has two accesses, or this proposal has two accesses, the River Road. And you can maybe sort of, to me, it's great that it has two accesses. But it was sort of mentioned, it's a bit of maybe a dead end because they're both coming out the River Road. But again, I look at that as this is a planned neighborhood. You don't have to look too far, just north of Norway Grove Memorial is Chapel Green. And we built that with only a single access to River Road, knowing it was planned to have an access to the north. And now that's connected. And then you can go back even a couple of years earlier, and we built Hawthorne Point. It was a single point pretty much, and there was an emergency access. But it's things that if we have it planned, that eventually things will, say, be better. And I think this proposal with two accesses to River Road is a great scenario compared to a few things we've done in the relatively recent past.
And if you take a look at our northern interstate corridor plan, it does have accesses off of Street C heading north and connecting with EFCO Circle, and then going southerly and reconnecting with River Road at that point. So again, we're gonna have a lot of these situations where, you know, they're going to be growing pains. We're not, you know, it's hard to see the complete picture at this point just because of how things are changing so quickly. And, you know, whether that's looking at streets, looking at services, looking at how the equalized value created off this parcel will eventually impact the overall equalization of the village as a whole, are all factors in this big formula that we need to make decisions on every year, which you'll be hearing about next.
Okay. Bill.
I share the same concerns that trustee Witherspoon had. And I've talked to Bill about this, about what is the cost to service new developments. And 20 years ago, we didn't. There was no planning. It's just build, build, build. Well, we're right now built in the last year, or considering the proposals that come through here, almost 1,400 apartments. That's quite a jump. It's 2,800 people if you go by the 2 people per unit. There is a cost. We don't know that. In our strategic plan that we okayed last year, we put in for funding to find out what that cost is. I think it should have been a little higher priority. We should all had that done right away, so we know. Now all these proposals are coming forward, we're approving them, and then we're gonna find out what the cost is. It's kind of putting the cart the other way behind the horse. We had a comp plan in 2023 we approved. That process was moved up because we were making too many amendments. Let's get a new one. Well, in the 18 months since then, we've been asked to amend that twice in the last 6 months. And it's been kind of reactive to what offers come along, not to what planning is. And are we gonna, another 6 months have another comp plan amendment? But yeah, the cost of the services for all these developments is concerning, and I wish I knew the cost. And the chief's comments in the report kind of mirror what the resident, Mr. Gonzalez, had talked about. The more doorbells and more doors you have, the more police calls you have. And there is a cost to that. Are we gonna add, like with Buc-ee's, it was said, maybe you would have to add a half a cop. Well, half a cop, you can't hire a half a cop. That's a cost. And there is a cost per 1,000 residents, or the chief had says you need, say, 1 per 1,000 residents. Well, this is almost 600, so there's a half a cop. And there is a cost. I wish we had that moved up in a higher priority. I had a question for the Fred guys. Looking at your website over the weekend, your various developments, they all look nice. Compliments to that. Will this, one of the units, I think it was on the east side, north side, lists that you have 3-month rentals, 4-month rentals, 6-month rentals, 9-month, 12 months. Would that be the same thing?
Yeah, many of our residents prefer that, depending on where their situations are in life, and that is something that we do offer as an option.
Right. Is that usual? Because I haven't rented anything in 37 years. To be able to, there's your extended stay hotel type of thing,
I'll let Sam address it a little. He's a little bit closer to the rental side.
Yeah, so what we use is called LRO. It's a software through RealPage, which has become kind of industry standard in the last couple of years, I would say, and it's LRO stands for lease rent options, and it provides a menu of options. Most of our residents still choose the 12 months. And I think our average resident lives with us for, it's like 2.7 years, over the last 10 years, if you look at an average. But sometimes people they think they want to buy a house, so they choose a 5-month lease, which aligns with their needs better. And usually after the 5 months, it's still hard to buy a house, and they re-sign for a longer period of time, but it really is there to just provide options.
That's what I kind of understood is, say that 5-month lease was $3,300 a month and the 12-month was $1,750. So you're paying for that convenience.
Correct.
Just, you said 2.7 years. How many people are 9 months or less, say? Is it like 10%? Of your people? Sorry to put you on the spot, but just, is it many or is it few or is it vary?
It varies. It's a good question. I know our average turnover rate is far less than 50% on an annual rolling basis. So that's inevitably part of a multifamily living, is you have people that are in different life circumstances, that some of them are looking for a house. But we also have residents that are there for many, many years. So it's case by case. But in a development like this, which has more of a single family condo feel, we would see a higher retention rate for sure.
Right. Thank you.
All right. And I think that it's also common when I was working for corporations, they would assign me in Houston, or we'd go to Europe or wherever, and we'd take a short-term lease because we were there for 5 or 6 months, and we appreciated both having on-site management and decent places to do that and having that option. So I don't think it's an uncommon thing at all. Yes, Jan.
I just want to say that this is going to be a difficult vote for me because I see both sides. For this type of development, I like the development. I like the garages. And from what I've heard and seen from your other properties in the area, I think you do a good job. Yet I see the other side of it with those issues being brought forward, the demands from the police department, the EMS. We don't quite know how that's going to pan out. And also just having a little bit higher density than what was originally planned. It would be great to have single family homes, yet on the other hand, these aren't high-rise apartments either. So I guess knowing that, I just wanted to let you know that I think it's going to be a difficult vote for me.
All right. Yes, Colleen.
To Jan's point, I was very glad to see that this does not exceed 2 stories. The townhouse design, I believe I've seen somewhere along the way here, very attractive design. I guess in light of the fact that we just approved and it's under construction, the Bueller Farm, which I think has a new name now, subdivision area, and we've approved all these, there are a couple of new apartment buildings down near DeForest Yards, and I don't remember hearing all these concerns about public safety as it pertains to them. I don't know why this is suddenly such an issue. We are growing, we're going to continue to grow. It is, of course, going to put a strain on our services. But are we going to stop all development at this point? Because it's going to strain our services. And Mark, did I hear correctly that this, as far as the increase in density is, what was it, 0.04 change in what the density formerly was?
That's
I
right.
think I might have heard that from the Freed group.
No, that's correct. And if I could just add to that, and as you're looking at this development on screen, part of this site is already designated for 6 to 12 units per acre, about half of it. and about half of it's designated for 0 to 6 units per acre. So, on a whole, this site is designated for the type of density that we're seeing here. Where the plan is, the current comprehensive plan is different from what is proposed, is that the current comprehensive plan, I'll say, wishes that some of this site, particularly on the northeast part, could be single-family detached residences. That's the main reason they're here before you for a comprehensive plan amendment, not really for the density. That when you look at the village's comprehensive plan and you look at the description of low-density residential and what that is planning for, it says predominantly single-family residential. And by no one's measure is this predominantly single-family detached residential. That's why they're here before you for the comprehensive plan amendment. We did have a proposal, as you recall, called Yahara Grove here over the past few years that had single-family residential development. It also had 3 larger apartment buildings that attracted a lot of attention, not positive attention, to kind of pay for and make the development go. And even with that, and they were pretty far along in their approval process. Even with that, they walked away because they could not successfully market single-family residential development on the balance of the site. So as I looked at this proposal, and we as a staff looked at this proposal and considered the pros and cons, we also looked at, what else could happen here. And I think the what else is over the years, and Jim knows all the names of the development proposals that came and went here, is that single-family detached housing on this site is highly unlikely to occur. So then the question is, what is appropriate? This seemed like a fairly good fit. You see all the green space close to River Road. It's intentionally designed to provide public park space and green space to provide a sense of separation from the single-family homes across River Road. The plan correctly doesn't provide any access yet except to River Road, but we do have a long-range plan, as Bill mentioned, to get that access north and south. So is this the best we're going to get? I don't know. But I don't think we're going to get a predominantly single-family residential subdivision on this site.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the things that I'll comment on, and then I see your hand, Rebecca, is that we have housing needs in this community for workforce, for workers that of a variety of ilk, for a growing community. And this provides some options that that we really need. And if we do things like just single-family housing, no multifamily, it becomes very hard for the developer to afford those costs. You need some of the volume. You need to have the level of density, a level of density that makes the project economical. And I believe this does that. If they had come in with just single-family housing, I'd hate to see what the cost of those single-family houses were. We wouldn't be affording them in my price range, and many people in our community wouldn't be affording them. I think that the issue of safety and fire and police is somehow being hung on this project without the reality of how do we solve that project in a problem in a broader manner. We need to look at solving those costs, but, and maybe that's impact fees, maybe that's a variety of other approaches, maybe that's making sure that when senior housing occurs that we make sure that they pay their fair share because they use more EMS and fire services than anyone else. I mean, we need to look at that. And the study that Alex has been proposing to us will begin to look at that. It's a complex question. But we have a lot of other growth that says we need housing. And I think this is a good project for this location. And I encourage us to look at this rationally and not hang an issue that we've made somehow public just on this issue. You know that I've been harping on fire and EMS funding for a long time. That problem is much more complex than adding a few homes here. That problem has to do with overall billing services and overall changes in how fire and EMS operates and overall changes in going from a volunteer fire department that started when there were a couple hundred people here to now we have full-time paid trained staff to support. So it's much broader than just this project. So I would hope that we would be rational and look at all of the good things this project does for the housing needs in our community and look to support it. Rebecca, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple things real quick. First off, as far as the issue related to the fire, EMS, PD stuff, it's with each progressive development, it becomes more and more of an issue. With some of the earlier projects, we probably didn't have as much of an issue. But as we add more and more of these larger type projects, it does become more of an issue that we need to consider a little bit more. That said, I do actually like the project. I'm not discounting the project itself. I think it's a very well-planned, very attractive project. Just kind of like what Trustee Stefan Hagen-Hahn was saying. I think it's, I'm not necessarily even opposed to where it's located. I am concerned about a couple of things related to some of the costs associated with how we're going to fund to make sure that we can keep up with the services. That I've already expressed. But as far as the cost of the units themselves, so we do have a variety of housing issues here, one of them being workforce. I don't believe this is considered workforce housing. It is more market rate.
It is market rate. Yeah, in fact, our average rent is about $2,300 a month. That's an average, which in order to afford that, a person will have to be making about $110,000.
Right.
So this is acting more like the folks that don't want to or don't want to be in a house. They're
right.
This gives them the opportunity to have a direct entry, right? You know, a nice townhome style garages, things like that. So that's what we started out when we started looking at this site. We wanted to accomplish that. And then as far as density goes, 6.04 units per acre. That's as low as we would ever go. So this is in all the communities we've developed in the area. We're typically looking at between 15 to 17 units per acre. So this is a fraction of what we would typically look at.
And I really appreciate that very much. I remember when you guys first presented to us and we were like, I don't know about that. And I really appreciated the fact you came back and you made some really significant changes, which I do appreciate very, very much. I guess it's a difficult one for me, but at the same time, I do very much like this project. So I'm going to have to sit here and think for a few minutes, but I'm not quite there, but I'm thinking, okay.
Well, while you're thinking, I just wanted to add that we do intend to do this all, even though it's phased, it would be all one approval. I think some of the site work and whatnot that we would have to do would require that. So the plan would be an ideal setting to move right into the second phase while we're still finishing up the initial phase.
Out of one last question to this, do you foresee any potential future amendments that would increase the density?
No, in fact, if you look at the site plan, we are maxed out. So we're as high as we can go that the site will allow reasonably, and we can't go any lower either.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move to Jim and then to Shidra.
I guess to start, I would echo a lot of the sentiments that Rebecca has. I think it's a well laid out, and I appreciate the concepts of your buildings and things like that. I'll say you don't know me very well, but I'm an engineer, so I have a handful of tweaks, I'll say, that I'll probably pass on to Mark, so we can hopefully address some of my more minor comments between the PDP and the FDP. But one thing that I want to come back to as far as like the issues that are in front of us tonight, and one that I guess I'm looking at you, Mark, we talked about having the medium and high density different colors, I think, but there was also a park component. And I'm looking at the concept that we have in front of us right now on the TV screen, is it shows a bit of a public park, it's labeled. So are we gonna show green on our land use map then too?
Yeah.
Or move that green?
Yeah, if you follow, well, you see that the green blob in the middle of that maroon outlined area. That's the current comprehensive plan's conception of a public park in that area. What would happen with this plan amendment to keep things orderly more than anything is that green blob would shift to River Road to more closely reflect where the fiduciary proposal is suggesting it be.
Yep, and thank you. I personally appreciate that because like whoever said that does create a bit of the separation between this single family and the higher density, or I guess medium density that we're proposing. But can we go back to the previous screen quick? I just bring up a bit of a concern with what we're showing for a park because I looked at your grading plan and it looks to be on the west side, there's a considerable slope. And I don't know how that plays with our park ordinance. I think there's different slopes that are only allowed. So I guess I'll just maybe let you and Mark work that out. I don't know if that's gonna change, say, the CSM or not, but to me, that could also, the slope could be an amenity if we wanna, say, make it into a sledding hill or something too.
Yeah, that will certainly be addressed in the next step, but there is a grade break proposed there. So the entire site is designed to be compatible with all the FHA requirements. So for accessibility in the site and traveling, we had to have some sort of compromise where the grade will break. And if we need to do some retaining walls or something creative there during the FDP process, it's something we're prepared to look at.
Yep, and I'm sure we'll address it then, and if there's the need of some fencing, because I was a little bit concerned how close the grade break is to that sidewalk you got proposed, but again, we'll figure that all out during the FDP. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Jim. Tashidra.
Thank you. Just making sure that I took the mute off before I started talking. First of all, thank you for this. And I do like this. The one thing I like the most is more than one access point. I do love safety first. And having only one entry is not as safe. I remember Chapel Green only having one entry, and that was not fun. The one thing that I wanted to mention, or a couple things, is I do love this plan, and I like what you've put together, and it looks like you've been working on this since March. I have a problem with it not being affordable, but once again, that we're working on that in other areas, and we're addressing that in our community in different ways. So that once again is not as big of a concern. We talk about the strain on the services that we have in our community. And that is going to be an ongoing thing with the way we're growing and developing in DeForest. I think that that is something we're going to have to move up on our agenda anyways. And we're going to have to put that at the forefront of our minds because we're not going to stop growing and we're not going to stop developing. And so I think we're going to have to take a closer look at our service department and how we support them and pour into them to make sure that our residents and our community members are supported no matter which way we grow and develop. So I really think that we are going to have to take a closer look at that. I definitely want to know just what kind of tax revenue we're going to get from all of this and how this is going to pour into our community. Like I said, I don't know, and I'd like to know that. This is definitely going to be a difficult decision because I hear everybody's points and they're really good, valid points. But the takeaway for me is we're growing and developing and we need places for people to lay their heads. And that's one of the things, and people are coming to DeForest and they want a place to lay their heads. And so I appreciate all the points.
Thank you, Tashidra.
I can address some of those questions. So in a development agreement that we're currently negotiating, this, when said and done, promises to deliver approximately $52 million in assessed value. That's the guarantee. What that means, quick math, is about $930,000 annually in tax revenues. And that's, as I see in the development agreement, we're anticipating that this full construction would be conducted by 2029. Now, this property itself is in the tax increment district, so the village recognizes the full amount of the $930,000 to be able to utilize in the tax increment district itself. And that's at the current mill rates. Once that tax increment district does close, about 40% of that will come back to the village. So that's about $400,000 to the village. So, you know, if we were to compare apples to apples, I would say that, you know, whatever that increase in tax revenue is proportionately to the overall tax levy, you would put that into your police services, your fire services, et cetera. Again, it's not apples to apples because there are areas in the village that is going to require more demand than others. And so that, you know, that's again, our job to spread the wealth.
Thank you. Just one more.
Jim's had 3 or 4. Will your units be sprinkler? Okay.
Sprinkled.
Sprinkler system.
Fully fire protected. Yes.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, we've had quite a discussion. The item before us is, at this point, is the ordinance to amend the future land use map and conceptual development plan. Remembering what Mark told us in the beginning, that should this not go forward, then the land use changes will not go forward. So this is related to this project. So with that, I would entertain a motion to approve ordinance 2024-023.
I'll make a motion to approve and I'd like a roll call vote.
And is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Tashidra. We have a motion and a second, and I would ask Callie to note roll call.
Trustee Little,
Aye.
trustee Simpson,
Aye.
trustee Stefan Hagenhan,
Aye.
trustee Witherspoon,
No.
trustee Allen,
Aye.
trustee Landgraf,
Oh,
president Cahill Wolfgram.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-2.
Thank you. Okay. so then we also are taking up item 10.2 before we go back to Carol. And that's ordinance 2024-024, an ordinance approving a rezoning and planned unit development, preliminary development plan for Rivers Bend townhouses on parcels specified west of River Road and north of Daly Road. Okay.
Question.
Yeah.
Is this, so this would create the ordinance related to the rezoning? Is that what this is? I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
Yeah, Mark can probably answer this one better than I can, but the previous one was in the comprehensive plan. This one is the actual zoning.
Got it. Thank you.
The ordinance would rezone the site to PUD planned unit development. And would approve the preliminary development plan that someone's rifling through right now that describes the exact nature of what can be built there and only what can be built there. This ordinance, in its section 2, kind of like the last one, would only change the zoning map to PUD when the final development plan is approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And they pull the first building permit to carry out that final development plan. So like the last one, it's not a blank check. It's written, the check is written to Fiduciary Real Estate for this particular project and this project alone.
Thank you. Does that clarify your question? All right. So with that and understanding what we're doing, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve 2024-024, and again, calling for a roll call vote.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion, comments, or questions? Okay, if not, roll call, please.
Trustee Simpson.
Aye.
Trustee Stefan Hagenhan. Trustee Witherspoon. Trustee Allen.
Aye.
Trustee Landgraf.
Oh.
Trustee Little. President Cahill Wolfgram.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-2.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. All right. Carol, now.
Wait, one more thing.
Item 8.1, discussion regarding proposed 2025 budget for special revenue funds, tax increment district funds, and utility funds.
Good evening. So 2 weeks ago, we went through the general fund and a few of the special funds that have an impact on the tax levy. Tonight, your packet included full budget with all of the funds included. So we're just going to highlight a few of the things in the other funds that we didn't talk about 2 weeks ago. The memo that was included in your packet did talk a little bit about some of the special funds, just to make sure you're seeing any unusual things that might be coming up in 25, just to make you aware of what may be changing. Debt service funds, that is pretty typical from year to year. We just go with whatever payments are due in that next year. So there are typically some changes in the amounts, but that is kind of out of our control at this point. What's due is due. We just have to pay it. When you get into the TIF district funds, obviously those are very fluid. So what you see in there is our best estimate right now of what we think may happen next year, but those are subject to change, obviously, as Bill mentions all the time. What projects we choose to complete end up being dependent on the development that comes in. And obviously we're going to make sure that we have the funds to cover the costs of those projects before we move forward. So you may look at some of those and think the costs seem high, but just remember that we don't necessarily always move forward with everything that we have in there and what may be anticipated, but we try to include anything that might possibly happen just so that you're prepared for what we hope will happen, I guess. I did put in your memo here also the fact that our debt service funds are well within our limits. You know, we always talk about making sure we're staying within the state limits, and then we also have internal policies that are more strict than what the state allows, and we are well within all of the policy limits that we have set for ourselves. Fund 400, our capital projects fund, we did talk about the capital projects that are planned in a previous meeting. So I'm not going to necessarily talk any further about those projects since we have gone through those before. But I did include actually in the folder for the meeting tonight a list of the vehicles and equipment that are intended to be purchased as part of that capital improvement plan. There's been some discussion about maybe wanting to look at that list and fine tune that a little bit more. So I did include that list so that we can go through that again if we need to. Yeah, just have it ready in case they want to discuss that further. Utility funds. So that's really what is kind of the focus for tonight. So
Does that include the heat bill? Did we pay the heat? It's getting colder in here.
sorry, DeForest only handles water, sewer, and stormwater, so I can't help with the heat. So as far as the utility funds are concerned, we'll start with water. As you may remember, last year, we had talked about potentially going forward with a simplified rate case increase. And I went through that process with the attempt of doing that increase, and we ran into an obstacle right at the end because we are now over 4,000 meters. We have changed from a Class C utility to a Class AB utility. And now as an AB utility, we can only do an increase if we've had a full rate study within the last 5 years, which we had not. Our last rate study was in 2017. So you directed me to move forward with an RFP and look at getting somebody to come in and do a full rate study for us. So there is no plan at this point in time to move forward with a rate increase because we have to complete that full rate study before we can even consider doing that. So I'm in the process of getting bids, proposals for that, and we will talk about that as we move into 2025. But I'm not concerned at this point because our rate of return for 2023 was 7.7%, which is very strong. So I don't foresee any concerns with the fact that we are not in a position to raise rates at the moment. I think fine. I did mention in all of the 3 utilities, I mentioned the fact that we've kind of changed our philosophy and we're not borrowing for vehicles and equipment. We are now trying to fit that into our annual expenses. So that was new for 2024, and we are trying to do that again for 2025, which is why I thought the vehicles and equipment list may become important because our costs related to vehicles and equipment did go up for 2025, and so that is putting a little bit of pressure on some of the utilities. So we'll talk about that a little more at the end. We'll jump to the sewer utility. We typically every year do a sewer rate study. So I have Baker Tilly working on that right now. Part of the reason we do that is because the Madison Metropolitan Sewage District does increase their rates pretty significantly in the last few years. We are anticipating another pretty significant increase for 2025. So we're going to go through with the rate study and just make sure that we keep our rates where we need them to pass those costs from MMSD on to the customers. So you may remember for 2024, we kind of have 2 different sets of rates. One is specifically to cover those MMSD costs. The other one is kind of our own internal operating costs. We did not increase our own rates. We only increased the portion that's kind of the pass-through portion. I kind of anticipate that may be what happens again, but it's hard to say because we are doing that full sewer extension over towards the west side of town. So that could have an impact, but we'll just have to wait until we get that study back and then we'll talk more about what to do with sewer utility rates. For the time being, what's in the budget is not anticipating an increase. We are just looking at increase in usage and just kind of showing what we expect the revenue will be based on current rates with just looking at the usage trends. And then when you get to stormwater utility, we have oftentimes in the past done an increase of about 25 cents per month per equivalent runoff unit, which is kind of like an average home is 1 ERU. So it ends up being about $3 per year of an increase per your average household. In 2024, we did do a little bit more of an increase. We did a 50 cent per month increase because we tried to incorporate the equipment and vehicles into the budget. So we kind of did a little bit more of an increase just to make sure that we had enough revenue coming in to cover all of our costs. As I mentioned, the vehicles and equipment planned for 2025 are more than they were for 24. So that is pushing an increase into each of the utilities of about 55,000 for each of the utilities. And stormwater has a little harder time absorbing that kind of an increase. So a 25 cent increase might not be enough if we want to continue that practice of trying to incorporate all those vehicles and equipment into the expenditures for the year. So underneath in that memo, underneath the stormwater utility, I had two different charts laid out. The first one goes based on our anticipated plan of only increasing 25 cents a month. So that's a $3 increase per household for the year. If we were to do that, you will see that we end up with a loss at the end of 2025 of $16,000. The $16,000 doesn't concern me as much as when you get down to looking at what your cash balance is on hand at the end of the year and what our policy says we want our reserve to be at the end of the year. According to policy, we would want to have about $361,000 on hand. And based on the budget plan, we would only have about $315,000 on hand. So our reserve is getting a little low if we do it that way. So the other schedule I put in here was looking at going up each year in 26 and 27. We're looking at raising it 50 cents each year, just to show you that that's what you would need to be able to get to the point where not only are you covering your annual costs, but you're also kind of helping rebuild your reserve and making sure your reserve is growing as it needs to, according to your policy. So what's in the budget right now is a 50 cent per month increase. It's taking you up to $108 per year per ERU, which is your average household. And then, as I said, the two schedules kind of look out into the future and what your increases would need to be in order to stay on top of those changes and make sure we're keeping our reserve where it needs to be. So that's where you now maybe have some decisions to make. If you want to continue paying for vehicles and equipment, that's the kind of increase we're going to need in order to make sure we're covering those costs.
Within the operating.
If you want to continue to pay for those within operating and not borrow for them, then we're going to need that rate increase in order to cover those costs.
Okay. So, comments, questions, Bill?
Yeah, the stormwater thing, I understand. But before you got here, Steve Falgren, laid out 5 years numbers, and those numbers haven't jived. It changes every year. We talk about this every year. What causes that? Well, the cost of the equipment goes up. Does maintenance of the stormwater facilities go up too? Labor.
Mm-hmm.
The cost of mowing machines, we gotta have a brush hog, that adds, I don't think a lot of people realize when Public Services goes down to the hardware store and buys a bulb. It gets split between streets, water, and stormwater, or sewer and water.
Yep, it does. So there are really like three major things that have happened in the last couple of years that are driving costs for the stormwater up a little bit more than maybe what Steve had been showing you in the past. One is you've taken on that stream bank restoration project. That's driven some costs into the stormwater that weren't thought of 5 years ago. Obviously, the way we're changing vehicles and equipment is driving up the annual costs. And then there is some major, I don't want to say changes, improvements happening around retention basins. And so those costs have gone up quite a bit in the last couple of years as well.
I just wonder if there's any DNR mandates imposed that have increased costs. Oh, okay.
Doesn't look like it from the way Judd is shaking his head.
Okay, that helps it understand a lot more.
Judd's gonna address that.
I'll just add, we have gotten additional stormwater basins that were managed by development until it's time to become public. So that would add additional pressures to our stormwater costs that we have to maintain those things, right? So we add those in. Corcus manages some of those for us. Our guys do some of that work as well. But there's nothing, no mandates from DNR, EPA that have added to that.
Oh, okay. And it just budgeted more, you know, it's more of a jump. But like everything else is going up. I finally was talking to Jan Berg last night after the show over there. And I asked her about the camera, $65,000 for the library. And, you know, I just noticed that over the weekend. I went back over the budget. It just seems like a lot. Is that a fancy system or?
No, not at all. It's the camera system they have is old and antiquated. Some of them don't even work. So it's very similar to the system we have here at the village properties. Runs off ExactVision, has the ability to record, maintain that stuff, but it's not a Cadillac.
Okay, and then the borrowing, the tax to the taxpayer was 90,000? I can't. Where was that?
The amount for the cameras at the library.
No, not for the cameras, for the tax for borrowing. You know, the cost to the taxpayer, 90,000. And then 2025 will be 143,000.
Oh, you're talking about the equipment replacement program? Yeah, we did in 2024, we taxed $90,000 and put that towards equipment to help lower what we had to borrow to cover costs in 2024. And we are looking to potentially increase that amount for 2025. So
That's
that we're
50,000 we were talking about.
Yeah, so that's part of, again, the strategy to move some of these items out of what used to be operational line items in the operation department budget, right? So we wanted to be a little more transparent about it. We also wanted to have a better management of replacement items. And so we brought it into Fund 400 under the equipment replacement program. And so as we're taking the expenditures from there, we also took the revenues from there so that we don't have a false identification of additional revenues coming from, nowhere.
Okay, and just to clarify, we borrowed 2.5 million or somewhere around there last year.
Yep.
And 2025 is $3.2 million.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
But of that 3.2 million, that does not include any vehicles or equipment. We have separated that out and we are not planning on borrowing for that at the moment.
Right.
Rebecca.
Yeah, could you just clarify, remind us what it is we're borrowing for the 3.2?
It is the list of infrastructure projects Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Find that here. These don't have page, no, I'm in the wrong thing anyway. It is page 50. Page 50. Mm-hmm.
Can somebody bring that up on the screen?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, she has the budget. Is that the right list? Yep, that's it. So the top section is the list of projects that total 15.6 million. And then the second section is funds other than taxes. Those are funds that we will get from either grants or other places. And then the bottom line is the amount we plan to borrow.
The part in green.
Part in green.
I'm sorry,
The other funds.
maybe I wasn't following exactly what you were saying. Say that again.
Yeah, the second section, which is kind of shaded green, is the section that those are funds we will be getting from other places.
Got it.
And then the bottom line is what we will borrow. And the 3.2 million in the capital projects fund, that very first column, is the part that is taxpayer supported.
And just approximately how much is the cost of our debt service each year?
Cost of our debt service?
Yeah, like the interest that we pay.
Oh, I think last year it was 4.5%.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
What it's going to be this next year, your guess is as good as
Who
mine.
knows?
I don't know.
All right. What would you like from us, Carol? You're not wanting it, we're not voting on anything.
No, you are not voting on anything. I am trying to get to a point where you are comfortable with me putting out the notice for public hearing.
Okay,
So if there are, my understanding is if there are changes you want to make, we want to get those in and settled. And then to a point where we can start the notice for public hearing, which should happen on November 19th.
okay. And
Carol, did you want to talk about property insurance and liability insurance numbers that came in this morning?
Yeah, we got a total. It's very hard when we just get it in total
these
to say how that's going to impact the tax levy. It did come in only about 8% higher than prior year, but until we get the detail and can actually sit down and look at how that allocates out, it's very hard to say how much is general fund versus other funds. So, like 1 year we saw where the police squad cars suddenly jumped up. Well, that's all general fund. So depending on how it gets broken down and where it gets allocated, I can't say that it's only going to be an 8% increase.
But didn't you account for an approximate 10%?
Yes.
So as long as it's not going over that, it's not going to
In
increase.
total, it didn't go over 10%, but I don't know the details. I don't know how it's going to break out by fund. I can't say the general fund won't go more than 10% over. I don't know yet. So I just don't have the information I need to be able to tell you.
Okay, thank you.
There is a 10% placeholder in this budget.
okay,
So again, what we're asking for tonight is to see if you're comfortable enough for us to send out the notices for public hearing. We would anticipate that that would be the second meeting in November. After the public hearing, there's still opportunity to make changes in the budget. However, we want to try to maintain as much as possible through that public hearing and the final budget.
because we got to get the tax bills out, people. And we want to have adequate time so they go out correctly. So, all right. Anybody is comfortable? Let's give her a thumbs up. All right. So you have Jim and Bill who still have questions, but we don't know what their questions are specifically. But just remember, it's two people, not the rest of us, so.
Well, that's why I said, now's your opportunity, I guess. If we're going to make any changes before the public hearing, this is your opportunity to make those. So.
Yep. Okay. All right. Do you have anything specific, Jim?
I just have a general desire for the 3% to be 2% or lower, so I will continue to look at places and pass comments on the Carolyn bill.
You don't want to go too low or we're going to have problems with
I know.
the rates in your TIDs.
Well, it's not only that, but, you know, if you take a look at really, you know, if you break it down between the what's being proposed to be added, to get to what we are at now at 3%. Again, I've informed all of you of this, that if you take a look at the numbers, the general fund portion of it is approximately 0.6% increase over last year. That fire and EMS, and we've heard about it this evening, is really at that 2.5% increase over last year. That's just how big of an impact that is to our budget this year. And so, you know, if you want to get to that 2% or anything lower than really the 2.5%, you really need to be prioritizing items. And those are significant changes. And so we need a directive from you to understand where potentially of services we will cut. And so that's going to take, I mean, that's a significant conversation. And if that's the direction that the village board wants to go, I would suggest that we probably plan a special meeting in between there to discuss that.
And I repeat, at this point, it's not the majority of the board. All right. Rebecca?
Yeah, I'm cautiously in favor of moving forward with this. I think my biggest concern is, okay, so we did have a big hit this year, and I know we don't have a crystal ball seeing next year, but my concern is that, you know, we went up last year, now we're going up again. And I want to be really cautious about, I just want to say, I don't want to see us going up any higher again. So, and I know there's factors that play into that, and sometimes unforeseen things like what happened this year happen. Okay. I'm a realist in that respect, but I'm right with Jim over there as far as I want to see this a lot lower next year, if at all possible. Just keep that in mind. Thank you.
Jan?
Okay, so my understanding about this 3% is that really 2.5%, 2.4, 2.5% is the EMS fire department situation. There's nothing that we can do about that. So thinking that the rest of the village is only at 0.5%, I mean, it really doesn't get any better than that. I mean, that's right next to zero. So I have no trouble going along with this. I feel that the staff has done a great job at holding things to a minimum. And I guess that's all I got to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Jan. Colleen?
I have no problem with going along with the 3% either. I think we were 2 last year. We were 2.3 or 2.5 the year before. I think we've been doing a heck of a job holding things as best we can, considering how much we're growing. So I think you squeezed everything you could out of this one this year, and I appreciate that. I'd like to see a 0 or 1% increase too, but I know realistically that can't happen.
Bill?
And I just want to reiterate the long-term financial strategy here. I can't say this enough in that, when you look at the growth of rate, you look at the services provided, you look at our strategic plan that, our residents demand or request that the level of service is high, and we've been able to provide it, right? And so, you know, we have to long-term, look at it long-term and try as best we can to manage through, you know, what is a desirable 0% increase, right? You may have a 0% increase one year, but then in a harder year, you may have a 9% increase. And so that's what we're really trying to stay away from here. We're really trying to balance this through a long-term effect and make sure that the expenditure budget is steadily growing along with the revenue budget and overall growth. And so again, that's financial strategy and policy that we've taken. We've taken that with, you know, debt service. We've taken that with capital improvement. We're doing that with equipment replacement to kind of stave off those risks, financial risks to the village. In our utilities, we're doing the same thing. And so if the board desires to deviate from that, we do need to know that and early on, and we need to you know, take those steps to start to put in a different strategy.
All right.
In the sewer, you know, you got this notices 528,000 for Sanimax for next year. Is they're closing, part of the business is still operating, right?
REG closed.
REG Chevron, it was separated out from Sanimax probably 4 or 5 years ago. They were two separate entities.
Oh, that's what I thought, yeah. But the numbers there without Sanimax, does that screw up the numbers? Sewer system operations?
Sanimax is just a straight pass through. Like we have to budget for it, but then we collect that same money from them, right? So it's whatever we get billed from MMSD for their high
Oh, it's a
strength
wash?
use. It's
Oh, okay.
straight, the same with Little Potato Company, which is not near as great as Sanimax.
I just saw that and I was like, well, didn't they close?
No.
Well, well, it was some kind of, they changed their name every couple years. Sanimax used to be Burbank Grease, correct? Oh, okay, and then the fuel place where they made fuel was separate.
The biodiesel started with Sanimax. It was part of their
Right,
entity.
right.
They sold it off to something else, and then it became REG, I believe, and then it became Chevron, and then Chevron closed it for the time being. They may reopen it. Who knows?
Which one stinks, Chevron or Sanimax? Sanimax.
One's
was-
operational.
All right. All right, thanks. I haven't smelt it lately.
Well, that's good. All right. We're not going there again. Let's keep moving here. Carol, I think you've got what you need from us. All right, let's keep moving here. 10.3, Resolution 2024-090. Resolution authorizing the village president and clerk to execute an amendment to the development agreement for Bueller Farm subdivision between Bueller Farm LLC and the Village of DeForest. Mr. Chang?
Yeah, I can give a quick summary of this item. So if you remember a couple of months ago, the village board approved a development agreement with Pleasant Hill DeForest LLC. That is on well, it used to be the Acre Bueller property, currently being developed now, the grading and Northtown Road going through it. So they started construction as we've gone through part of the construction. There's been some conversation back and forth. So the changes highlighted in the amendment are I think mainly 4 items here. One is the assignment from Pleasant Hill DeForest LLC to now Bueller Farms LLC. The second amendment is in regards to the location of the water main in lot 35. Lot 35 is the multi-residential lot that's on the 33. Would be, yeah, 33, which would be in between will be Northtown Road and Highway 51. They asked for some flexibility in there because we don't yet know what the final site plan will look like for that. So we wanted to make sure that we had, still the detail of ensuring that that water main comes to that portion because we have water main on the other side of 51. Additionally, there was a discussion and back and forth on when the payment for street trees would execute. The development agreement has them paying for all of the street trees within the development except for Northtown Road. You know, at the beginning of the development, and they've asked for those street trees to be paid per phase. Understanding that some of the phases may not come until a lot later. We didn't see an issue with that, so that's represented in this amendment. And then lastly, was a change of map of the phasing and what areas are restricted. That was updated to properly reflect the most recent. And that exhibit is also attached. So that's the summary of what the amendments are to the agreement. I'm happy to take any questions at this time.
Move to agree, and then I've got a question.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second, and
You gotta approve the resolution, not agree.
say again.
I think your
Move-
motion was to agree. Well,
Oh, I'm sorry, move to approve. I just said it wrong. I'm tired.
All right,
what's the second on that?
I second.
we have a motion and a second. And now have a question from Rebecca.
How are the names of these streets decided? I'm just curious.
So obviously Northtown Road is there.
Right.
The developer proposed as part of the plat, the names of the streets.
I'm just wondering where they get the names to. Do you have any idea where they got the names, or are they related to like family? I'm just curious, that's all. It's a stupid question, just
You
curious.
gotta ask someone who's lived here longer than me, so Judd's got the answer.
Okay,
There's grandchildren are the two of the names, and then Virginia it's Virginia Bueller. That's her. So they
Okay,
homage to her, right? So if you're asking about other names, Stack, I think, was a founder of a company in town long ago, right?
okay. Well, that makes sense now. I'm just always curious, and I thought I'd ask this time. Thank you.
all right. We have a motion and a second. There's no other discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Your check register on item 11 was in your packet. Committee, commission, and board reports. We'll run through these quickly. Jan, do you have anything from the library? No, from,
That would be
Tishy.
me.
I'm
Mhm.
sorry.
Not a problem. They hired a new library staff member and she's working out great. And Jan was very happy with the new addition. And they're still working on the library birthday celebration, and it's coming together quite nicely. And I am excited about it because we share the same birthday. There you go. You're welcome, and that's the end.
And it's a big party for you.
Yes, and my name will be on the back of my t-shirt and it will say it's our birthday. Thank you.
Congratulations. All right, I'm sorry, Jan, I just, blew it. Public Safety Commission?
Oh, we approved an operator's license and that was the highlight of that.
Okay. Community and Senior Center. This one I know is you, Jan.
Nothing new there.
Okay, thank you. All right, Community Development Authority. I think Alex gave our update. He talked about the condemnation and the other approval. The only other thing I'll say is Attic Angel seems to be working well over at Jefferson Square. So, Planning and Zoning Commission, Jim?
So Planning and Zoning Commission, our last meeting is September 24th. there's a number of things that we've already seen here on the board. Most of them were associated with the, say, Cake Parkway area. The name of the client, I forget, but mostly the Dickmans. And then also what we talked about tonight, the Rivers Bend, just south of Norway Grove Cemetery. That's the majority of everything we talked about on P and Z.
Thank you. All right, we've got,
Jan, I'm sorry, I just want to add a quick thing to that. This was not at the P and Z, but the October P and Z meeting has been canceled. And then they'll, just November and December meetings are on the second Monday of the month instead of the fourth Tuesday due to the holidays, so.
can't believe we're talking about holidays. I know, yeah.
10 Fridays till Christmas.
Thanks for giving me the alert. My grandchildren give me the alert. Yeah. Jim?
Public Service Committee.
Yep.
The September meeting, we talked about the comp plan amend 2025 comp. Oh, capital improvement plan is, yes. And then also the court plan and then a surface water grant. And like P and Z, there will be no October Public Service Committee meeting.
Okay, thank you. DeForest, Windsor, and Fire and EMS. We talked about the thing we've been talking about, revenue, billing, and recognition that until we figure this out, there is no second station coming. But when we do start talking about it, I think we've already identified that it will be a small thing and maybe we can add on to it at some point. But there's a real recognition. The first business is to figure out revenue and billing. So we're working on that. Those were the reports. The board minutes were in your packets. I don't have anything other than, do you have anything from DCCVA? Okay. And with that, we're about ready to convene into closed session. So I would entertain a motion to convene into closed session.
Motion to move into closed session, please.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Stephen Hagan-Hahn.
Aye.
Trustee Witherspoon.
Aye.
Trustee Allen.
Aye.
Trustee Langraf. Trustee Little.
Aye.
Trustee Simpson.
Aye.
President Cahill Wolfgram.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. We will take a break while they're getting set up. And we will come back very quickly here.
Oh, you're not.
All right, now they're ready to. All right, now we're moving to item 16, action resulting from closed. And we have a resolution 2024-089, authorizing the president and clerk to execute a development agreement with TDS DeForest.
Move to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Unless there's any other business to come before this body, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
You beat me, Bill. Just a reminder, our next meeting is
October.
right here, the 29th, and then we won't have one on election.
Good night, all.